If you want to master your life, you have to master your mind. Your mind can be your greatest asset, or it can be your worst enemy. In this video, How to Master Your Mind, we're going to do a deep dive into the brain, into the mind, into neuroscience. And then you can use this knowledge to create your reality. Welcome to episode number 28 of the Be Ultimate podcast. This is your host, Travis Elliott. How you folks out there doing? Look, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in week after week, because this podcast, which was started by just myself and my main man, Jason Reen, back in January 2019, is really exploding. We're now in 85 countries. So just want to thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing with your community. Special thanks to any of you that have subscribed, rated, reviewed. I see your comments. I see your screenshots. You take a screenshot and you post it on your Instagram story, and then I often repost that. So just thank you for your support. This week's episode of the Be Ultimate podcast might be the best one yet. It's a game changer. You understand this knowledge and this information, and look out. You are going to be unstoppable. I've used this myself. I've shared this with many students, and I've seen them go on to really live the life of their dreams. And this subject of learning how to master your mind is really rooted not just within the ancient traditions of yoga, but also within modern day neuroscience. So we're going to unpack this. The Buddha said that the mind makes a terrible master, but it makes a great servant. And Jesus Christ said, as a man thinketh, so he becometh. So this information I'm going to share with you, it's not necessarily new. I mean, it's been espoused by great sages and masters for thousands and thousands of years, but we don't always hear this a lot. We don't always hear this within our culture. We don't really hear this within what media is blasting out. So I'm hoping that this will be useful and be helpful to you in many, many different ways. In India, they often compare the mind to an elephant. They say that an untrained elephant can destroy a whole village, in the same way that an untrained mind can destroy an entire human being's life and everybody that's connected and in those relationships. If somebody is dealing with, say, like a drug addiction, it not only destroys that one individual life, but it hurts everybody else connected to it. That person's parents, their siblings, their family, their loved ones. God forbid if somebody commits suicide, it wreaks so much havoc. And a lot of this is really unavoidable because we have this information, we have this knowledge, and now we have this science that says you can train your mind. You can master your mind. And in the same way that a trained elephant can build a village, a trained mind can do the work of 1,000 men or women. You look at the Gandhis and the Martin Luther King Jr.'s and the Jesuses and the Buddhas, and so many people have walked this path where they've showed us that when you master your mind and you move through life with nobility and grace and an open, kind, compassionate heart, you have the potential to affect potentially millions and millions of people for generations to come. So within you, within me, we have this potential. We have this seed. In the Bhagavad Gita, one of the great ancient yoga texts, it says, we must deliver ourselves with the help of our minds. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for the one who has failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy. We get to choose. Is our mind going to be our best friend? Or is our mind going to be our worst enemy? Is it going to help us and serve us? Or is it going to bring us down and diminish our power and maybe even destroy us? So you can look at your mind a little bit like a tool. For example, look at a knife. A surgeon can use a knife to heal somebody. A criminal, they can use a knife to kill somebody. In the same way, we can use our mind, this instrument, this powerful instrument that we've been given. And what a blessing that is. We can use this tool to our advantage, but we have to know how it works. 95% of who we are by the age of 35 is run by unconscious programming of the subconscious mind. Now, the first time I heard this statistic, I was shocked, and I hope that you are too, because what this alludes to is that you're only in 5% control of this instrument, of this mind, and that 95% of how your mind is being governed and run is completely out of your control. So naturally, we have to become conscious and aware of what in the world is going on in that subconscious mind. And that's the first step. The first step is awareness. And we become aware by becoming present. We start to become awake to what is going on inside of our mind. What are these thoughts that are moving through our mind? Because these thoughts ultimately, as you're going to learn, have a lot to do with your present reality. You know, one way that you can look at this concept of enlightenment, and enlightenment's a little bit of a loaded word, but look at the word enlightenment as if you're literally turning the light on to that subconscious mind. You're exposing and you're illuminating everything that's happening in that 95% of that subconscious mind. And this is what the ancient yogis, they dedicated their life to. In fact, yoga in the beginning for thousands of years had nothing to do with physical poses, and it had everything to do with the science of the mind. So, it all starts off with your thoughts in your mind. And then those thoughts trigger feelings. And then those feelings, they trigger a mood. And then that mood, if it lasts long enough, turns into an attitude. And then the attitude turns into a state of being. The state of being triggers or ignites a personality. And then your personality is what's creating your reality. So I know that that's a lot. But we're going to go and look deeper and deeper into that. And you can always pause the video, take notes. You can also visit thebeultimatepodcast.com. We always transcribe these podcasts. So you can go there and you can read it. And you can read it over and over and over again. So you really get this wired inside of your brain. So your present reality has everything to do with your thoughts. It all starts with your thoughts. The thoughts are the catalyst for that whole chain of events. Thoughts to feelings, feelings to mood, mood to attitude, attitude to a state of being to a personality, and your personality, which is 95% unconscious, is what's creating your reality. So if you're in this reality where you're not happy with your career, or your relationships, or your health, or your spirituality, or your personal development, chances are is because you're not the one that's in control. So your thoughts 95% of them are unconscious. They're all coming from your past. And this is why Dr. Joe Dispenza says when you are unconscious, your yesterday becomes your tomorrow. And this is the sad truth that many of us are living in, where we're just in this perpetual loop where our past becomes our future. Our past becomes our future. We're unhappy in the past and we're unhappy in the future because everything is cyclical in nature. We think a new thought every 1.2 seconds, but remember, 95% of those by the age of 35 is a thought that you've already thought before. So that's a total of 60,000 thoughts. And that 95% are the reruns. So you can imagine you're stuck in the Motel 6 and the TV's on and it's just looping these reruns on over and over and over again. And unfortunately, these thoughts often don't have your best interest at heart. 400 billion bits of data are processed by your brain every second. This is why the brain, which is the organ that is able to harness the mind, is said to be the greatest creation in the entire universe. 400 billion bits of data every single second. And we're conscious through the frontal lobe of the brain of only 2,000 bits of that 400 billion bits. So again, this just points to more reinforcement that all the information that's coming in through the five senses, we're not really conscious and present for most of it. So your brain is the organ, it's the physical apparatus that your mind functions through. And these practices of meditation and mindfulness and yoga is really about becoming aware, becoming awake, becoming conscious of these cycles, of these loops, and of these patterns. Because your thoughts ultimately are what trigger the feelings. And then the feelings go back and they trigger more of the same thoughts. And so that's a loop. Thoughts to feelings, feelings to thoughts. Thoughts to feelings, feelings to thoughts. So if we have a good cycle going, we're in a good loop, or what I like to call an upward cycle, then obviously those patterns are really serving us in a positive way. Unfortunately, it's usually the reversal. Usually the case is that it's a negative pattern or a downward cycle, a downward vortex, where a negative thought is triggering a negative feeling, and that negative feeling is triggering more negative thoughts. And before you know it, you just feel like you're in prison. You feel like you're stuck. You feel like you've lost your power. And this is where people get really, really depressed. They feel like they're in this place that they cannot escape. And I'm here to tell you that there's a way. There's a way out of depression. There's a way out of unhappiness. There's a way out of misery. And many, 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 many masters have taught this wisdom. And all I'm doing is tapping into what they've shared with me and just passing it on to you. Hopefully it will help. Now look, I got a great life. I got a lot of things that I'm blessed to have. You know, I feel like, you know, I'm in a career that I love to do. I feel like my health is great. I'm 41 years old. I feel like I'm getting stronger, more fit, more healthy every year. Financially, I'm in a great place. Spiritually, I'm in a great place. And working with personal development, always trying to grow and learn and challenge myself. So I have these positive loops that are going. But it doesn't mean that there's not more room for growth, right? Doesn't mean that I don't still have goals. It doesn't mean that I want to expand. And very often, progress equals happiness and joy. when we're growing, when we're making progress, we feel alive. The universe is expanding. The universe is making progress. So maybe us as human beings are also meant to be expanding and making progress as well. Now, I want to do a play-by-play of how the brain works when you think a thought. So again, if you need to pause the video at any point or look online at the script, please feel free to, because this information is mind-blowing. Step one is we think a thought, right? So we think a thought, and what this does is it produces a biochemical reaction in the organ of the brain. Step two, this turns on certain circuits within the brain. We think a thought, and now we activate these circuits inside the architecture of our brain. This takes us to step three, where we produce a certain level of mind. Step four, this creates a holographic image in the prefrontal cortex right behind your forehead. It creates an image of who we think we are. So this has to do with our identity and our ego. And a lot of times when we talk about ego, we talk about it in a negative way, but we need an ego. We need an identity. Otherwise, we would not be able to function in this world of form. So now we have this image of who we are that's projected as a holographic, multi-dimensional image in our brain. And then step five, this activates neurotransmitters which influence neuropeptides in a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. This is a part of the brain that's the chemical or the emotional part of the brain. Now this is important because this takes us to step six. So now the brain releases signals that are transmitted and taken throughout the body. And then step seven, the body produces a feeling based off that original thought. This is how your thoughts go to create a feeling. So it took us from step one to step seven to create that feeling. And of course, in real time, this is like super, super fast. This is all happening. Now, step eight, your brain is monitoring what your body is feeling. And then what it does is it produces more chemicals corresponding to the feeling of what it felt within the body. So this is how we get addicted. This is how we get stuck in those same thoughts and feelings. You had a thought, you created the chemistry that went into the body, this created an emotion, your brain's observing what it is that the body's experiencing, and then it goes to produce more chemistry to reinforce that feeling. So we get addicted to the feeling, almost like a drug addict getting addicted to the drug, and we need to get that fixed over and over and over again. So we create this negative loop, or as we learn to do through these practices of meditation and mindfulness, we create the positive loop. We use the loop and the pattern, the cycle, to our advantage. So as you do these loops over and over, where the thought's creating the feeling's creating the thought, that keeps going over and over, what happens is you begin to wire your brain in this specific configuration. The brain is neuroplastic, which means that we have the ability to rewire the brain, and it's all reinforced by these thoughts and these feelings and these behaviors and these habits. So this thinking that creates a feeling, that creates a thinking, that creates the feeling, that creates a thinking, this creates our state of being. If I'm thinking negative thoughts and then I'm feeling negative feelings, I'm creating a state of being that's negative, that's toxic. Now we have what's called an electromagnetic signature, which is a fancy scientific way of saying we have vibes, right? Like we have vibes. Things have vibes. You're around some people and they have good vibes. You're around other people and they have bad vibes. You don't want to have anything to do with them. You want to dodge them. You want to avoid them like the plague. So those vibes that you're feeling is electricity and magnetic energy. So your state of being is emitting out to the space around you a certain electrical magnetic signature. Now, if we're thinking positive thoughts and we're feeling benevolent, uplifting feelings, then we're creating an electromagnetic signature that's broadcasting into the space around us that's going to attract more of what it is that we're broadcasting. Vice versa, of course, if we're in that negative, toxic energy and vibration, then we're going to attract negativity. And this is what happens, right? People that are thinking and feeling good, they attract more people that are like that around them, more experiences, more resources, and that creates more of that positive vortex or upward spiral or momentum. So mastering your mind is about mastering this loop. It's what it's all about. And this is the science. Now, what we think about and the energy or the intensity of these thoughts directly influences our reality and the choices that we make and the quality of our life. What are we thinking? What's the emotional intensity? These, again, are going to shape our destiny. So a person who wants to improve the reality, myself included, I got a great reality, but hey, there's more room for progress and growth. If I want to improve my reality, what do? I have to look at these patterns of thoughts and feelings. And new patterns are going to create new attitudes, which are going to create a new state of being, which is going to create a different electromagnetic signature, which is going to attract and affect things in the world of form. So energy affects matter. And the idea is that we want to use practices within our life to create really, really good energy. Because every thought and every emotion, it has a frequency. And negative thoughts and negative emotions, they have low frequencies. So you look at emotions and feelings like anger, depression, anxiety, fear, lack, resentment, separation. These are low energetic frequencies. This is what creates low energy. Bad digestion, bad sleep, disease, illness, excess cortisol, adrenaline, stress, being stuck in our small, limited self, a distorted electromagnetic signature, incoherence, disharmony, suffering, misery, unhappiness. We feel those things because of the thoughts and the feelings in our state of being, right? It all lines up. Now, what we have the capacity to do is we have the capacity to lift or to raise the energy, the frequency, and the vibration. So as we begin to move towards more positive emotions and thoughts into feelings and experiences like connection and generosity, forgiveness, kindness, compassion, love, courage, then we begin to down-regulate those harmful stress chemicals. Our energy increases, our digestion improves, our sleep improves, we're healthier, we have more vitality, we're not getting sick, we're able to manage stress, we have greater resiliency, we're no longer in the small self, we're in the big self. Our electromagnetic signature is now harmonious. No longer are we incoherent, but we have coherence between the brain and the heart and all the 50 trillion cells in the body. We're no longer suffering. We're no longer surviving. We're thriving. We're thriving because we've raised our energy and our vibration. And when we tap into a state of unconditional love, then we come back to the source, to what some people may call God. We come back to the very source of who we are. And you ask people when they have a near-death experience, what's going on in their mind, what's going on in their heart, they will tell you that they thought about all the people that they loved and all the people that had loved them. In the beginning, it's love, and in the end, it's love. And then for many of us, we get lost. And we start chasing after all this materialistic stuff. We're programmed by the news and the media. 95% of who we are, we're not even in control. And so we're these programmed robots that are doing these things that we think are going to bring us happiness and joy. And it's actually pushing us further and further and further away. In modern day age, we couldn't be more comfortable. We have so much comfort in our world. There's so much wealth in the world, but yet depression, anxiety, suicide rates are at an all-time high. Why is this? Because we got our priorities wrong. We've been chasing after the material instead of focusing on the non-material. And it's not that the world of form doesn't matter and isn't important, but we got to focus on our relationships. We got to focus on our health. We got to focus on giving back to others, of being of service to others. All this stuff raises our vibration. It creates that upward spiral. And then before you know it, you're improving in all sectors of your life, your career, your health, your relationships, your spirituality, your personal development. It's all taking off. Now, if you have a negative thought, and they come for me too, they probably come to even the greatest saints. The difference between the average person and the saint is that the saint doesn't believe the thought. Whereas the average person, they believe the thought. They believe in that bad negative thought. But remember, your thoughts don't always have your best interest at heart. Now, I'm not telling you to deny what you naturally feel, because sometimes in this world of positive thinking and self-help and self-improvement, they tell you to just feel good all the time. But part of being a human being is that sometimes we just don't. We might be in a little funk. Now, an emotion lasts only about 90 seconds. Anything beyond that is because we're perpetuating that emotion longer and longer. And that's where the emotion turns into a mood. I'm in a bad mood today. And then if we stay in a bad mood long enough, then that turns into this attitude, and that colors the way that we perceive the world. And then that attitude, that creates this state of being and this personality. Now we're just, and these people, right? These people, you don't have to go far to see the people that are just, it doesn't matter, life sucks, according to their point of view. And that's because they're stuck in that loop. Now, what I'm saying is, you may have a challenging experience at work or in your relationship. A lot of times this stuff comes up in our intimate relationships, or you move through challenges. You have a loved one that passes away, or you lose your job, or your doctor gives you a very scary health diagnosis. These things happen to all of us. And when those happen, we don't want to be like, yeah, everything's fine, I'm just thinking positive. That's called spiritual bypass. What we want to do in those instances is we want to see things as they really are. And we want to feel what it is that we're feeling. We may feel sadness, we may feel despair, we may feel anger, and that's okay. But here's what I want you to do. if you feel angry, instead of saying, I am angry, I want you to just say, I feel angry. You see the difference between the two? I am is reinforcing the state of being that you are angered. That's very dangerous. Whereas if you use the phrase, I feel angry, this gives you permission to feel it, but to also know that you're not the anger. That doesn't define who you are. You don't have to necessarily get entangled within that anger. And so you can feel it, and you can be mindful of it, you can be present to it, and then eventually whatever that negative emotion, feeling, thought is, it will pass, because all things are impermanent. Now we have these cycles within our brain waves. And these brainwave cycles are very, very important to understand, because when you want to master your mind, you have to know how to do it. So we have what's called beta brainwave patterns. And we have high beta, mid beta, and low beta. High beta is when your brain is cycling at about 22 to 50 wave patterns per second. Mid beta is about 16 to 22 per second. And then low beta is about 13 to 15 cycles per second. Now, when we're in a beta state, we're usually in a stress state. Our analytical mind is very, very active. And the reason why this is important is because you can't access your subconscious mind and retrain your mind if your brainwave patterns are in a state of beta. So we have to learn how to slow our brain waves down. And we can do that by slowing our breath down. It's as easy as that. You start to slow your breathing down, you start to slow your brain down. You slow your body down, you slow your brain down. You slow your mind down, you slow your brain down. This is why breath work and meditation, practices like yoga, qigong, tai chi are so good for your brain, because you're shifting your brainwave patterns. Now, when we get below beta, we get to the alpha. And the alpha is the beginning of accessing the subconscious brain. And this is where we're cycling now 8 to 13. And then beneath alpha is theta. Theta is 4 to 8. And this is where the real magic happens. And then beneath theta, we have delta, which is 0.5 to 4 cycles per second. Now, when we're born, we're in that natural state of delta. So from the age of being born to about 2 years old, we're in that delta, that lowest brainwave pattern state. And this explains why babies are sleeping so much. From the age of 2 to 6, now we go from delta up to theta. We're still in the subconscious brain. And this is why kids are so easily programmed between those ages of 2 to 6. You say, hey, there's Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy, or just things you're not even thinking about. And you say like maybe something like money is the root of all evil. And those are very dangerous things to put in your kids' brains and minds, because they're so highly suggestible that you're programming them. This is why we have to be very, very mindful of our speech with these kids 6 years and below. Now, once we get from the ages of 6 to 12, we go from theta to alpha. And this is where we begin to start to develop the analytical mind. So we start to question things. We start to analyze things. We become more skeptical. And these can serve very useful purposes. But at the age of 12 and above, what happens is now we move into that beta brainwave pattern, and now we become disconnected of that subconscious brain, And we're always analyzing, we're always criticizing, we're always skeptical, and we can never get in and start to reprogram and retrain ourselves. So the ticket is, if you're wanting to master your mind and you want to, think these thoughts that are going to affect your feelings, that are going to affect your mood and your attitude, your state of being, your personality, your reality, then naturally you want to be very, very present of what thoughts that you're thinking, right? But if you really want to have long-lasting impact and change, you're going to have to make sure that you spend some time on a daily basis of slowing the brain waves down from beta to alpha to theta, and then starting to work at programming your mind. So you start thinking these thoughts, you start thinking these feelings. Now you're firing new circuits in the brain. You're producing new chemistry, which is producing new feelings in the body. And then your brain is monitoring that and saying, hey, this is what's going on down there. Let's reinforce this. Let's keep this going, right? So every day, I want you to think about these 4 tips, the formula to master your life, to master your mind. Number 1 is simple but very, very profound, and Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about this. Just be aware. So many people they're not even aware that they have thoughts moving through their mind. They become so overly identified with these thoughts, they don't even know that there's a part of them that's beyond that. So the simple act of just being aware as much as you can throughout your day of what your thought process is, what thoughts are moving through your mind, and even if you don't like what you see, and that'll happen, don't judge it, but just simply be aware and watch and observe. Very, very powerful. So I want you to do that. It's step 1 of the formula. Step 2, meditate. Meditate every day. I don't care if it's 5 minutes or 50 minutes, but every day find time to meditate. And here on the Be Ultimate podcast, every month we are releasing a new meditation because it's so powerful. This has to be a part of your daily regime. This needs to be a non-negotiable in your life if you want to master your life. Now, there's episode number 8, the Affirmation meditation is very much in alignment with what we're talking about. So check that out, the Affirmation meditation. It's free. It's part of the podcast. It's on YouTube. Get it however you can. It is 20 minutes, but again, 20 minutes will be the best 20 minutes of investment you've spent most of your day. Number 3 of the formula, take time to visualize what you want at the beginning of the day. Michael Phelps, he talks about this practice of mental rehearsing. Before he would go and do these meets, he would mentally rehearse swimming in the Olympic gold medal event. And he would rehearse all the things that could go wrong, all the things that could go right. And he would play this out in his mind over and over and over again. A lot of these great athletes are using visualization, they're using mental rehearsing as a way to really fire those circuits inside the brain. So at the beginning of the day, you've meditated, you've slowed the brain waves down, then think about, what do you have coming up the rest of your day? Do you have an important meeting? Is there a special event that you have to go to? Is there something that you want to create? And mentally rehearse inside your mind, really excelling and being brilliant, being amazing, being top-notch, high caliber at what it is that you're doing. And then that will trigger a whole slew of events that will support you to do that. And then lastly, number 4 of the formula, anytime you have a negative thought, I want you to spin it into a positive thought. And remember, we talked about the spiritual bypass. I'm not saying to deny what you really feel. You can be aware of the negative thought. If you're moving through something really challenging in your life, of course, you need to grieve. You need to process that in a healthy way. You don't want to pretend like you're not being affected, because that's not truth. That's not real. That's the ego that wants to pretend that. The ego wants to always be fine and play it safe. So you keep your heart open and you feel what you're feeling and you say yes and. The negative thought comes, yes, and then you spin it. And you spin it to a positive. And you start reinforcing this new circuitry inside of your brain that creates new feelings, which creates new chemicals, which creates a new state of being, which creates a new reality. And the more you do this, the more you practice it, the more amazing and unstoppable and incredible your whole entire life will be. And you know what? I'll be on the path right there next to you, doing the same thing. We're in this together. Let's finish now with the ultimate prayer. May we bring strength where there is weakness. May we bring courage where there is fear. May we bring compassion where there is suffering. And may we bring light where there is darkness. May we be ultimate.